Okay, so I'm going to walk you guys through how the tutoring system works in Game of Sultans. So there's two pieces to it. The first one are sending out your kids to get scrolls from the envoys. So we come in here, each envoy, if you click in this button right here on the right, each envoy will produce some scrolls that you can send your kids on to go pick up. And sort of depending on where you are in your game, you may want some of these earlier ones, but for where I am at the game, I have a bunch of money. This is $60 billion that I just didn't get around to spending last Gold Rush. It's just sort of pretty slow right now with my game. I always pick the most advanced guy and go there. So here, that's because you can get this last fanciest type of scroll, and in my opinion, that's really the only kind of scroll that's worth going for, because it's most likely to produce heirs with the bump that you need to really do anything useful with this tutoring system. So I'm going to show you a little bit how it works. Each kid that you send out gets more expensive per each envoy per day. So this first one that I sent out, she cost $10 million. Now this next one is going to be 10.5. So I click that, she's off, and now this one is 11. So if you do dispatch all, you can kind of get a sense of how expensive this is and how quickly that gets up. The other day, I think I spent $7 billion to get 6 scrolls back, just because I'd sent out so many already. But theoretically, you could send them all out until you run out of money. But if we were to go step back to, let's say, this dude with fancy hat, you can see that first envoy, or that first kid, only cost 6.25 million to send out, and you still have a chance of getting one of those fancy scrolls, but it's a little bit lower. So I would say, just with my recommendation, would be that I think it's the Russian envoy. Yeah, that you want to do the Russian envoy or later to get at least some chance of getting these fancier scrolls, because they give you heirs that are just so much better. Okay, and then I don't know what happened at the bottom of my screen. There we go. All right, so then the second part is the tutoring itself. So if we come in to look at the tutoring panel for Murat, you can see I got a bunch of people, a bunch of kids set up already. But let's say I'm trying to get somebody who's fancier. I can go along here. So all these guys have decent development. I'm going to find an empty one just so I can sort of show you how the scroll works. Here we go. All right. So this one, now this is an important thing. It says research rating 0 out of 60. None of that information is relevant to you except the 60 part. That's the only part that I'm looking at. I'm not looking at anything else. And so here we can see what scrolls we have as a chance. And I just want to point out here, I went and collected so many scrolls over the last couple of days, and I still only got 26 of these, and it sucks. Okay, so let's say I want to develop, let me start with one of these cheap ones just so that I can sort of overwrite them a couple of times and it doesn't matter. So I do this, and I get a 5 out of 60 for prestige, which is terrible, but it is still better than the current specialty, which is 0 out of 60 for research. So I switch it, and that's an important thing. Once you switch it, you cannot go back. It's a one-way street. Now I have a 5 out of 60 in prestige, and the 0 out of 60 in research was overwritten. Okay, so let's do this for real. I'm going to click on this. Now I get a 37 out of 60 for research, which is better. At least it's good enough that I'm going to hold on to it for a little bit and see if I can fit it in anybody. And then because that's way better than the 5 prestige, I'm going to switch it. But again, clicking this means that I'm going to overwrite this previous rating of 5 prestige. So you don't want to do that unless you are really sure that you don't want that anymore. And it even gives you a little warning. But I am very sure. And so now Rianne or Rain or whatever might actually be useful to me. So now I'm going to go through and I need to find somebody who, if we look at Rain, he had a research specialty, which means that I need to get an heir, or I'm sorry, I need to get a tutor who matches one of those specialties, in order for them to match. So like, if I were to do Killick, I would not be able to put Rain in here, because Killick doesn't have a research specialty. He can only have Stacy. So let's look at my top. Let's say I want to put one on Ibrahim here. So I have Joe and Merlin are both not as good. So I'm going to switch out Merlin just to sort of show you what's going on. I'm going to take Rain, or however you say his name, and then I'm going to replace him with Merlin. This is another thing that you want to be careful about, because once you do this, you can't take Rain back out again until you have a higher level heir to replace him with. So until I get somebody who has a research rating of 38 or above, he is staying right there. He cannot be moved. Okay, and then the next things to take just a quick look at, I have the current affinity rating up at the top, which is the sum of the research ratings of the 3 heirs. And then I'm seeing that I'm having a power bonus of 2.2 million on top of his base power hitting. And then the next line is telling me that the next level is going to have I need to get to a total rating of 152. And then once I do that, I will get an additional 1.5 million. And that sort of is showing me the gradations there too. And you get more and more slots for the higher levels that you hit. I didn't even know that Viziers went to level 500. So I think that 4 is the most that you can ever reasonably hope for if you're like a normal player. And I think that's everything you need to know. Okay.